This week I've been wrestling with a question. It's a question that comes to me from the words of Jesus, really, but it's a question that isn't just 2,000 years old. It's one that I think comes to us and confronts us every day. And maybe COVID-19 exemplifies that or exacerbates that questioning. The question that he asks is, who do you say that I am? Or in the reading this week from Matthew 16 that I've been looking at, who do you say the Son of Man is? Some context. Brian McLaren says that Jesus took his disciples on a road trip. They went up north from Galilee to Caesarea Philippi in the northern part of the, the Jewish homelands, maybe even just beyond. 40 kilometres, which doesn't sound much to us, 40-minute drive, 30-minute drive, depending on how fast you're going. On foot, a few days' walk. The city of Caesarea Philippi in his time, it was an ancient city that had a very mixed and cosmopolitan history. Caesarea Philippi went way, way back. And back in the Canaanite times, it was a centre of worship of their gods. When the Greeks conquered the region, the Greek god Pan was worshipped there, the one who's half man, half goat, is it, and plays a flute. At Caesarea Philippi, there is a spring that comes up out of, I think it comes out of the grotto. There's a grotto there and a spring, which is the beginnings, or part of the beginning of the Jordan River, flows into the Jordan River right upstream. And near this grotto and spring there's an escarpment. And in this large, vast escarpment, there are niches carved into the side of this escarpment. And into that, idols and statues were placed to worship the gods. The grotto was a place of worship, a sacred site, where they would make sacrifices and offerings to the gods. This ancient city, one time called Paneas, after the Greek god Pan, was a very religious space. But it was also a very political space, because the King Herod, or Herod the Great, had made it a city and called it Caesarea, and built a palace there, one of his 3 large palaces near this grotto. And then his son, when he died in 4 BC, his son Philip inherited that part of Herod's kingdom under Rome, and he, in order to engender favour with his mentor or patron, I guess you'd call it, the Roman emperor, at the time was Augustus, he called the city Caesarea after Caesar Augustus, and then later Caesar Tiberius. Caesarea was named for the emperor. He gave it the second name Philippi, probably an ego thing about himself as the king, the local king, but also practical to differentiate it from another Caesarea on the coast, on the Mediterranean coast, Caesarea Maritima. That's the Caesarea that still exists today in Israel. Caesarea Philippi no longer exists except as an archaeological site in the Golan Heights. But this city was political. It was the centre of Philip's reign, if you like. It was his administrative political city. And so Jesus takes these disciples there, a city that's cosmopolitan, that's not just Jewish, but different cultures, politics, power, religion, all there, a mixed pot. And in that space, he asks them the question, well, who do people say that I am? And the disciples, we've heard, Elijah, Jeremiah, John the Baptist, one of the prophets. You can just imagine them, if you've got a bunch of people today, different denominations of Christianity, different faiths, agnostics, atheists, all sorts of people. Who is Jesus? Who do you say Jesus is? You'd get a range of answers. And I guess it was a bit like that. And they're probably outdoing each other. Then he asked them the question, so who do you say the Son of Man is? Who do you say that I am? The disciples in Matthew have already named him as you are the one of God. Back in chapter about 14, when he's on the water and he walks across the water and the waves and all of that still. But the question, who do you say that I am? That this Son of Man is a critical question. In the story, Peter, the kind of leader, the loudmouth, he says, you are of God, you are the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of God. And Jesus affirms this answer and says, well done, Peter, that comes to you not by human wisdom, but by the Spirit. And he says, on this rock I will build my church. And you'll have the keys of the kingdom. And what is bound on earth will be bound, what is loosed will be loosed. For some parts of the church that means Peter is the first part of the church, the origin of the church. For many Catholics, he is the first pope, if you like, and the pope wears the ring of the fisherman. But I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying, on this truth, on this reality, on this statement, on this act of confession, which is not about a belief system, but you, Peter, and you disciples have said, I am the Christ, the Son of God. But in a politically charged, religiously alive city in the first century, under the Roman rule, in the Roman Empire, the Son of God is generally the emperor. Caesar Augustus was the Son of God because Julius Caesar was deified before he died. In fact, Caesar Augustus was deified a month before he died. But he was referred to as the Son of God, the adopted son of Julius Caesar. He was the Son of God. He was the Prince of Peace, the one who brought peace to the earth through war, through his armies. He was the saviour of the world because he united the empire, the warring factions of the empire, into one empire, his first emperor. All these titles, Lord, Saviour, Son of God, Prince of Peace, that Christians later used for Jesus, belonged to Caesar. So when the disciples are saying, you are the Son of God, you are of God, what we need to hear is, Caesar is not. What these disciples are saying is, we're putting ourselves in your camp. We're with you, not with Caesar. It's kind of like, I don't know, is it standing outside the Kremlin and yelling out to Vladimir Putin, hey, you're not the president, Christ is. You're a pretender, I'm following Christ. Now Vladimir Putin is renowned for his violence and vengeance on those who are against him, say bad things about him. If this was in America, be standing outside the White House and saying, President Trump, you're nothing. I'm not following you. I'm with Christ. You can hold up as many Bibles as you like. You can call yourself the greatest of all time. You can say you're all wise and all knowing and you've done this, that and the other. But I'm following Christ, not you. That's the kind of question this was. Who do you say that I am? And in this world, that question comes to us time and again. Because what the disciples are saying, and next week's story continues this, shows you how they get it wrong. And when they get it wrong, they get it wrong. And there's implications in that. But for me, as I wrestle with this question, who do I say Jesus is? Who is he? He's either a raving lunatic in many ways, or a wise teacher, or he's the one who speaks of an alternate way in the world. And every day we have that choice to listen or not listen. Who do you say that I am? Because when I ask that question, it comes back to me. If I say there's a way of life, a way of being, a way of God, in what Jesus says, it demands something of me. Because his way is a way of love. It's a way of grace. It's a way of openness. It's a way of inclusion and peace. It's a way of life, not a belief system. It's a way of forgiveness. And that's what he's kind of saying. If you loosen things on earth, they'll be loosened. If you forgive, if you relax the things of law which bind people up, belief systems that hold them in their grip, ideologies and oppressive regimes, they can be loosened. Caesar, on the other hand, rules with violence. It's said that in his 41 years, I think it was, of rule as the emperor, Caesar Augustus had, was it days or weeks of peace? For the vast majority of his rule, he was at war, and his armies were fighting somewhere. That's the peace that he promises. Peace at the end of a sword. And we see that in our world. We see, well, as Vladimir Putin, who is an aggressive, dominating kind of presence. If you disagree with him, you become his enemy, and that's not a good thing. If you disagree with Donald Trump, he will give you a mouthful and a Twitter feed and everything else. If you disagree with various leaders in our world, it can go badly, because there's violence, whether it's violence that's physical, whether it's verbal, whether it's reputational. There'll be some sort of violence come back. You know, ask Martin Luther King Jr., or Dietrich Bonhoeffer, or Oscar Romero, or countless others who have challenged the powers of the world and met with violence. That is the way of Caesar. So when the disciples are saying, you, Jesus, are a God, they're saying Caesar is not. We are going to put ourselves in with a way of love and grace, generosity. That's the way of Jesus. That's the way that God invites us to be in the world. And so the question, who do you say that I am? If I am the way of love and life, you're going to throw your hat in with me? You're going to walk with me and journey with me in this way, this open way? Or are you going to follow Caesar, the ways of the world? In another reading this week from Romans 12, Paul says, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your minds, that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. And he goes on, don't think so too highly of yourselves. It's time we live together and work together. We were renewed in our minds. Conform not to this world, but to the dream that is in us, the dream of something better, something life-giving for all people, where everyone has enough. And there aren't some with far, far too much. A world that is different. May the world that emerges from COVID-19 be one where we work together. Instead of these stupid nations fighting each other and killing each other in wars, but also fighting each other over vaccines. Oh, I want it. Let's, competing. It's a world problem, it's a human problem. It's about time we work together. But the way of Caesar is to drive us apart, conflict and fight. That's not the way of God. Who do you say that I am, says Jesus? Who am I? The way of Christ still permeates the world. It's here, it's amongst us, this reign of God, in the beauty and the wonder, in the love and the joy and the peace and the hope. That's the reign of God. And he says, come, follow me. Who do you say that I am?